Hey there, it's Olivia Savannah here from Olivia's Catastrophe, and today we need to talk about spoilers. So first of all, I want to do something that I've been meaning to do for a while, where I talk about the ways in which you can spoil someone unintentionally when talking about books, and then we're going to be doing the spoiler tag that I was tagged in by Gunpowder, Fiction and Plot, a lovely couple, and I'll have a link to their video down below, and I'll also have a link to the original video creator and questions in the comment section down below. But yes, first I wanted to talk about the ways in which you can spoil people without intending to. Now, the first one that I want to talk about is telling people they are going to cry at the end. Now, I know that sometimes people seek out books that are going to make them cry, but I feel like when people specifically tell me that I'm going to cry at the end, I can assume what's going to happen. Like, while I read, I can meet certain characters and know this is going to happen to this character because I was told I was going to cry at the end. What I like being told is, at some point in this book, you will cry. And I think that works because there are a lot of books that will make you cry, not just at the end, but in the middle or at a very certain emotional scene. And I'd rather be told somewhere you're going to cry than cry at the end. And I know this is a very specific little detail, but there are certain books where I just immediately knew the outcome because of the way that people talked about them. I've got one book in particular in mind, but I can't say what the book is because then that would be spoiling it. Another one is telling people your ship is endgame. Now, I know when people are like, oh yeah, my ship, it does not always mean that ship is going to happen, but this can get a bit complex because if you say like, I'm team this, it doesn't feel like that ship is going to be a thing. But when you're like ship and they've got an official name, it just feels more, I don't know, it feels more like the ship is going to be endgame. I've had some people tell me before, oh, I really love this ship and I'm so happy they're endgame. And then I was like, oh, but I haven't read that series yet, and you've kind of told me who is going to end up together, which takes away a little bit of the magic for me. The last one is going to be controversial, but I'm going to say it with as much nuance as possible, and this has to do with trigger warnings. Hold your horses. I don't believe that trigger warnings are spoilers per se. I think everything should give trigger warnings. So for example, I've seen a trend in some books, like the first page of the book will have trigger warnings, and it's not all books yet, but I really appreciate when I see that in books. And I also see a lot of booktubers who give content warnings in the description box down below. I do this for my wrap-ups, and I see other booktubers do this as well, and I think that's such a nice trend as a way to give any content warnings that you stumble over while reading to people who want them. But when it comes to giving someone trigger warnings, I think we need to have a bit of a more of a conversation about nuance here. And this is why I didn't want to tweet this on Twitter, because there can be no nuance in this discussion in a few words. But I've had a few occasions where I've been talking about books in my videos, and then in the comments or something people are like, trigger warnings for this, this and this. And sometimes I don't really want to know the trigger warnings. For me, when I'm recommending a book to someone personally, I'll be like, oh, Bear Town, for example, is a fantastic book. I would really like to recommend this to you. Let me know if you want any trigger warnings. And that way it gives the person an opt-in, opt-out option, and they can be like, oh, I would like to read it, please do give me the trigger warnings. Or they could be like, oh, thank you, and they don't want to know the trigger warnings, so they don't ask me. And I think that's what happens when you put a book in the front of a page with trigger warnings there. You can kind of opt in and opt out for reading it, or you can opt in and opt out on videos for checking the description box down below, rather than someone straight up telling you the trigger warnings. And even then, I know some people who don't want to know all the trigger warnings but want to know a few, so they can be like, oh, here's Bear Town, I would like you to read it, let me know if you want trigger warnings. And they can be like, does it have this particular trigger in it? And you can say yes or no and not tell them the rest of the triggers. So I think with trigger warnings, maybe try and make it opt-in and opt-out if that's a possibility, but if it's not a possibility, I'm here for trigger warnings rather than against trigger warnings. But also when it comes to one-on-one conversations, a good thing can be to ask if they want trigger warnings rather than just tell it to them directly. And I'm going to request that in my comments you ask me rather than give it to me directly. But again, this is my personal view on the matter. I cannot speak for all people who use or support trigger warnings, and I just would like to make that very clear in this video. So that was the last one. That was a bit of a long explanation, but let's get right down into the tag now, where we can answer some of these questions. Question is, what do you consider a spoiler? And I think that's a very hard word to give a definition for, but I would consider a spoiler something that's not in the premise of a book, so not in the synopsis, and that is a key element that will happen to the story that might impact your view on the ending, or your enjoyment of the ending, or the suspense of the ending, or certain events that could happen throughout the book. I'll just say that's my definition. Does the genre you're reading impact what you consider a spoiler? And I would say yes. For example, in a fantasy book where there's a love triangle, if you tell me who wins the ship, it feels like a spoiler. But in a romance book where it seems like these are the two set up love interests, I don't consider it a spoiler to know that they're going to end up together. That's kind of an assumption you make reading romance often, more often than not. And also like non-fiction, you can't really spoil that. You can talk about this book has these themes that it discusses in there, and it's just not really a spoiler for non-fiction. So I do think it does depend on the genre what I would consider a spoiler or not a spoiler. Do you research books prior to reading them, or do you go in blind? So for me, I don't research per se, but I am someone who does like to know reviews before I pick up books or before I buy books. However, my memory is very selective in the way that I want it to be. You can read a review of a book or tell me a review of a book and I will easily forget the synopsis, and I will easily forget events, like the main events in the book. I'll probably retain a vague idea but not any of the details. What I will remember is your opinion. I really remember opinions of like, this person who I usually enjoy the same books as them, they liked the character development in this and they were surprised by the plot, and they didn't like the female representation. Those are the kind of things that I remember from all the reviews I hear and all the reviews I read, and it's from those things, those are the things that will impact whether I like a book or not, and therefore I'll pick up a book based on that, rather than pick up a book because it's got fake dating and it's got this trope and it's got that trope. I won't really remember the tropes that you said are in there. I'm going to remember your opinion of how things were handled, and that's why I can say I do research by looking into reviews and such, but it doesn't actually, that's not what sticks to me. It's the opinions. Sometimes the introduction or translator notes can include spoilers for classics. Has this ever happened to you? And no, but I think because with English literature, you just kind of quickly learn. You read the introduction afterwards. I usually read the classic and then read the introduction and then read the afterwards. I know they put it at the beginning of the book, but I do think, yes, those introductions are just like a little bit of analysis or a little bit of background into the story, and it can give you spoilers. So if you are reading a classic and it has an introduction at the beginning, I suggest reading it at the end, because then you make up your own opinion of the story and you have your own experience, and then you read the introduction and you can see a bit of the deeper themes and the analysis, and you've got all of your memory of the book to apply to what you're learning from the introduction, and that just makes it a better reading experience if you do it in that order, in my opinion. Name a time somebody spoiled a novel for you. Now, I've been spoiled not that often. I don't get many spoilers. I think the book community is very good with keeping spoilers away from you. I feel like if I am going to receive a spoiler, it's more likely to be from friends or people I know in real life who don't know spoiler etiquette as well as the booktube community seems to. And one of the times that I was spoiled that I really was not particularly happy about was for And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, which still stands as my favourite Agatha Christie, even though I was spoiled 100%. Because I was in the car with my sisters, we were on a long trip. I think we were driving to England, so it was a long trip, and it was many years ago. It was like, I was probably 8 or 9, or, you know, a young age where I hadn't even started to read Agatha Christie. But I remembered that my older sister had read it, and she was telling my oldest sister about the book, and I'm just going to give them names. Tamara said, I'm not going to read that, just tell me the actual mystery, tell me how it happened, who did it, how they managed to get away with it. And April told her, but I was sitting in the back of the car and I distinctly remembered every single aspect of the plot that April said. I don't know why I remembered that conversation. So when I went to pick up And Then There Were None a few years later, and I started to read it, I thought, oh, this book is from what April said, and I knew exactly who had done it and I knew how they'd done it. However, it did not ruin the reading experience for me, because even though I knew the outcome and I knew all of that, I could see the clues, I could see the build-up, and it's still such a good story that I really, really enjoyed it. And it was my first Agatha Christie, and it's still my favourite Agatha Christie, but I was spoiled for every single aspect of that murder mystery that you could be spoiled for. Have you ever spoiled a novel for somebody else? I don't think so. I'm not a huge fan of spoiling people. I could probably do it accidentally, but even when people ask me for spoilers, I'm very reluctant to be the one to give it to them. If people request spoilers, I'm more happy with them going and looking it up themselves rather than me telling them the spoiler, because I just hate being told spoilers. It kind of physically hurts me to tell it to other people even if they want it. But I'm sure that at some point I must have accidentally spoiled something for someone. I just cannot think of an occasion or bring one to mind right now. If spoilers ruin novels, so we've got that assumption, are there some authors or genres you can't reread? I don't think so. I think I'm happy to reread books, even if they're like a murder mystery where a lot of it hinges on who done it. I like rereading it and seeing, you know, how did they manage to do it? Can I see the clues where I could have figured it out even though I didn't the first time I read it? And I just think authors do such good jobs with small bits of foreshadowing in their work that it makes the rereading experience always enjoyable if you like a book enough to want to reread it. And even with non-fiction, if you're rereading non-fiction, you know, the first time you read non-fiction, there's a lot to take in, a lot, and different things will stand out to you at different points in your life, and you'll remember different parts of information, and therefore rereading a non-fiction, even if you know the main content that it's going to give you, can still be such an experience. So I don't think, you know, spoilers ruin rereading experiences. When you review, are you reviewing spoiler free, and does this impact how you review? I always review spoiler free unless I'm saying there's going to be spoilers in this, and I don't think being spoiler free impacts how I review. I talk a lot, like some of my wrap-ups get long when I talk about books, and that's because, as I said, opinion is what I'm talking about with my reviews. Sometimes I look at how they write, but opinion is my dominant factor in reviews. And I think opinion, you can talk about character development, you can talk about setting, and you can talk about relationships without giving anything away whatsoever, and therefore you can go really in depth with talking about a book without actually spoiling the plot. And I do think it's possible. It can be hard to do sometimes, but it's very, very possible. And sometimes, you know, you want to talk spoilers because you're excited about it. But that's why I love buddy reading, because then that's the time I get to talk spoilers with someone and share the experience as I'm reading it with them. Or, you know, once they've done my spoiler-free review, someone will comment and be like, oh, I really like this part of the book, and then I can expand into spoiler territory with them and discuss the book in more detail. So I don't think it impacts how I review at all. I think actually reviews being spoiler-free is a credit rather than a detriment to the review. And that is the last question. So I will tag some people down below to do this tag. Thank you to Gunpowder Fiction and Plot for tagging me. I actually really liked this tag and how much discussion it allowed me to have. So please let me know in the comment section down below. Do you like spoilers or do you not like spoilers? Because I know there's some people out there who do like spoilers. And please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Hit the subscribe button if you want to see more. And don't forget to hit that notification bell to be updated every time I have a new video. And you know what they say, onwards and upwards. Excelsior!